Hello, this is Brian, and today I'm going to show how I took care of the sniper rig and made it look like Cameron's movements in the graph editor. I already recorded this, so this will be a commentary over explaining what I made. So right there, I'm setting up keyframes in order to make the movements between Cameron's movements. I'm using the audio, checking where I should put the keyframes to make his basic movements for most of his body. Right there was Cameron's movements to make his chest move forward, and here I'm taking care of the chest first, since that's the greatest movement. Now, as you notice there, that keyframe wasn't added to the chest area, so I had to re-add the keyframes. But luckily I had the same position, so all I needed to do was just re-add the marker and then add it to the first and second to last frame of the section. And now I'm using the rotation editor in order to change the rotation to make his shoulder go higher, his left shoulder. And now I'll be moving his hand in order to make sure that it doesn't clash with his face, and put it in the relative right position. And I keep checking back to make sure that his hand is in the right location. And I also want to use the curve editor a little bit to make his movements a little more realistic. The more movements, generally the better it's going to look, because it'll look less stiff. And now I'm taking care of the head, and I have to re-add the keyframes like I did with the chest. So now I'm changing the head movement to make it look like Cameron's, and as you see there, I added an extra keyframe which I had to get rid of because the cursor wasn't on the right position. So now I'm moving the head to the middle keyframe. I'm moving the head location first, well, second after the rotation. And I'm also moving his chest a little lower to match Cameron's position a little better. I want to make sure that the hand, the head, and the chest move. I don't really have to worry about any other body part, aside from the eyes and the lip syncing. But as for regular body movements, that's all I have to worry about. And now I'm looking for another slight movement that Cameron made. And yeah, I'm testing the audio to see where his basic movements are. Cameron really only makes 2 consistent movements, so those are the keyframes that I need to worry about the most. And there I just added keyframes to the chest, the head, and the hand. So now I'm moving the chest a little more, making sure that it's still downwards. Because I added the keyframe to the second to last position, it started moving him backwards towards his previous location. And generally you don't want that. That's a mistake I made that I end up correcting later. Trying to make more head movements in order to make it more realistic and keeping the model less stiff. And I move the chest forward, which means that I want to move the head back and try and keep it in the general right position. Yep, gotta keep that shoulder up. And this is the keyframe I was talking about earlier. I fixed that, and I basically copy and paste, and then give a slight movement afterwards. Cut key, copy key, paste key. And I do that with all three positions. I don't know why I pressed the collar. I guess I was just looking for the right location. Alright. And now I copy the keyframe and paste it back in that position. And as you can see, there's not much movement for Cameron, but you still want some movement in between. So that's why you always need a keyframe at the end if you're using the graph editor. Otherwise, he'll just be still for that split second. And you don't want that. You want to keep him moving constantly. So now I'm moving the hand a little bit. Just a little bit, slight movement. Same for the head. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit. We don't need the same movements in the same direction. Generally, for realism, it's best to move them in different ways. So I'm actually moving the head up a little bit. And I'm gonna rotate the chest a little bit.
Rooney, I don't have all day to bark at you, so I'm gonna make this short and
I don't do much different from here. I'm just, well, actually, in between the first and second keyframe, there is a large area of empty space. So he's moving and he's making one movement. And I don't necessarily want just that one movement. So I add a different keyframe in between those two to make it a little more realistic. But here I'm just adjusting for the location because I want him to be a little closer to the camera. I'm trying to figure out what looks best. Yep, move that hand down. And now I'm moving. I'm adding a keyframe in between the second and first keyframes. So this will be the new second keyframe. And I just want to make sure that there's some slight movement.
Rooney, I don't have all day to bark at you, so I'm gonna make this short.
That looks a lot smoother than before. And here now, I'm going to be checking for Cameron's eyes. I want to see when they open and when they close. So I'm paying direct attention to the audio. So he opens his eyes twice, but most of the time his eyes are closed. Yep, always good to save. My laptop has a history of overheating, so generally saving is a very good idea. Now here I'm adding keyframes for the eyes. And I will need those keyframes for the eyes, but I should have put those keyframes on for the upper face, because that's where the lid is for the eyelids, the close lid action. And I realized this shortly afterwards, and get rid of those keyframes, so that way I can go to the upper face. And yeah, I'm gonna have to repeat those keyframes. And really I should start out with closed eyes, which is what I realize. I'm a little bit out of the routine of what I normally do, so I make a lot of mistakes in the animating process, but I fix them with a good old Control-Z. So now the eyes are closed except for that that moment in the middle a little bit where he says bark. And I am spreading out the keyframes a little bit to keep his eyes open for a longer period of time. And here I'm gonna add another keyframe to open his eyes again, and a distant keyframe for the action. So that way, to where the last frame where his eyes are closed, and then when it starts to open, in between those two keyframes. But yeah, that's generally how you take care of the eyes. And now I'm just going to do some separate movements for the... Well, I'm checking right now for the... I'm like double checking for the eyelids, but that seems to be taken care of. So now I'm gonna move the pupils, the direction of his eyes and where he looks at. I don't want him to look directly at the camera, but I want him to look at Ferris. So I make sure that it's not directly at the camera to avoid making the audience feel uncomfortable. And even though he looks a little bit further to his left, I don't want to take the chance of him looking at the camera. And I think in general Ferris is in a slightly different direction. So what matters most is that he looks at Ferris in the scene. And I believe here I get rid of that keyframe. Yeah, I get rid of this keyframe over here. And his eyes should be in the correct location. So another save, and we will get to the lip sync. Now here is where I'm going to take care of the lip sync. There's not much to it. The auto lip sync is very nice for Scout. I mean, not for... The auto lip sync is very nice for Sniper. And all I need to do is click on the audio and extract. And it takes a little bit to extract the lip sync. So now we wait. Now that the lip sync is done, here's the finished product.
Rooney, I don't have all day to bark at you, so I'm gonna make this short and sweet.
And as you can see, this lip syncing is pretty convincing.
I don't have all day to bark at you, so I'm gonna make this short and sweet.
Sometimes I need to add in an extra syllable or an extra jaw movement, but in this, I didn't have to do much extra. And that is the completed clip.
Rooney, I don't have all day to bark at you, so I'm gonna make this short